This is Chris Yeagle with Diligent Plans. I want to talk to you about the power of rehearsals as a leader. You know, General Norman Schwarzkopf, commander of coalition forces during the early 90s when we invaded Iraq during the first Gulf War, said once, "The more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed in war." The more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed in war. And I think that's important to realize, that you should practice as you're going to go into adversity ahead of time. You should create the same environment if you can in simulation. So as a leader, you're the ultimate simulator. You should simulate the conditions that people are going to face during harsh and stressful times. Why? Because it creates familiarity. It helps them to learn their processes better. It helps them to bond and be cohesive as a team. And therefore, during those times, you lose less. You lose less profits. You lose, maybe less people. If it's like a military situation or a police situation, you might preserve life or limb. So it's important to rehearse. I was very fortunate when I was in the military as a military police officer and a young lieutenant. I was in charge of a SWAT team for about 2.5 years. And what we would do as a SWAT, you're probably familiar, you've seen it on TV, there's an entry team that kind of goes in through a building and clears the house, makes sure it's safe, takes out the bad guys. There's sniper teams that are up on the roofs around the building. Well, what we would do if we were going into a structure, first we would try to find blueprints for that structure. And being on a military base, that was always available. That was always part of the records for the base. So we could find the blueprints. Then we would take the blueprints if we had time. Now, time is a factor. You can't always rehearse. Ask LAPD SWAT. They have call-outs every day. They never have time to rehearse. They're always moving. But when you do have time, use it. We used to take the blueprints. We would go to a nearby parking lot. We would get playground chalk. Yes, playground chalk. We would draw out the blueprint building in the parking lot in as best scale as we could to simulate the actual size of the building. And then my entry team would practice making entry and systematically clearing that building. Was it painstaking? Yes. Did I make them do it as much as we could? Absolutely. Why? I was creating the conditions as best I could in a simulated way for them to be comfortable. So when we went into the building, they felt as good as they could about clearing that building. Now, are there other factors that pop up? Absolutely. Are there booby traps and different things that bad guys use? Yes. Could the layout have changed based on the plans? Absolutely. But why not take the chance to reduce as many unknowns as possible? You gotta rehearse. All right, so that's a human example. Let me give you another example that comes from the animal world. I read this book about wolves, and it was fascinating. And one of the things I read in the book is, let's say a wolf pack, and they operate in packs. Lone wolf is a misnomer. That's not typically something you'd find in nature. They operate in a pack. What they do is, let's say they're hungry for elk. Hey, honey, let's have elk tonight, all right? And so they want to take down an elk. What they'll do is, the beta wolf, so there's a hierarchy in the pack. It's fascinating. Alpha wolf is in charge of the pack. Beta wolf is kind of the second in command. Once they decide they want elk, all right, the beta wolf will go down to a riverbed, right on the sides of a river or a creek or something where the ground is soft, dig up an elk bone. How's there an elk bone there? They put it there. They hide the bones of prey they've taken down to use in the future. She digs up the elk bone, she puts it into her mouth, they go to an open field, and she pretends she's the elk. She has the bone in her mouth, which has the scent of an elk. She runs, the pack chases her, and they practice the takedown of the elk. You imagine that? Wolves are doing this. Wolves, animals, are doing this in a field, practicing the takedown. And as the young wolves get up and try to take her down from the neck or from the front, she smacks them in the head with the bone. Why? That's dangerous. You can get hurt that way. She's teaching the young wolves to take down the animal from the back legs, much safer. Also, she is using her tail to she excretes pheromones from a gland around her hindquarters, and she uses her tail to waif it a certain way. She directs the pack's movement by wafting the pheromones a certain way in the wind. So that actually you can watch this from a helicopter. You can watch the pack actually moving based on the position of the tail as they're taking down the elk. Now, isn't that fascinating? Doesn't that, I mean, that's amazing that animals are doing this type of rehearsal before an actual takedown. And what are they doing? They're practicing to minimize injury, to minimize loss, and to be effective in the kill. All right, now listen, I'm gonna position something for you. If animals are doing this and you're a leader and you're not doing rehearsals, it's time to wake up. Animals are doing it. As a leader, you need to simulate the conditions that people are gonna face, no matter what the environment, to minimize loss. So do your rehearsals. Good leaders do rehearsals. Thank you.